So we're very fortunate today to have a few people that have been involved in some of our work around lived experience engagement over the past year join us to share their perspectives. So I'll start on this side. Pamela Pervy is a Métis woman who has overcome many struggles, including homelessness and addiction. Pamela is now a peer support worker with Alberta Health Services, who believes in sharing her journey so others can have a sense of hope that change is possible. And if I'm not mistaken, you are the first peer support worker hired by Alberta Health Services, which is a pretty huge deal. Next, we have Nikki Webb. Nikki Webb comes from a high-risk background and is now an activist for youth rights and works with inner city youth. Nikki is going to school at MacEwan University to get her bachelor degree in child and youth care. Next we have Kyle Kenneth. Kyle was a homeless youth in the city for a period of 3 years. He was able to better himself using the various resources and supports available to him at the time. Next we have Don Bilodeau. Don has overcome his struggle with addiction and homelessness. Don enjoys having his own home along with giving back to the community and helping others who are struggling. And anybody who's volunteered at Homeless Connect will likely know Don. Don has been a presenter at our training program for Homeless Connect volunteers for quite some time now. So thanks, Don, for that. Next, we have Danielle Bridges. Danielle is a graduate of the Housing First program through YMCA. Danielle is now in stable housing and enjoying her time as a stay-home mom to her 1-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter. All right, so we actually have some questions, and I'm going to start with the first question, and then after that, I think we'll just cut to the chase and ask for your perspectives. Like, what needs to change in our systems? What needs to change in the way we provide services? The way that people with lived experience are engaged in services. It's a little bit of a departure of what we talked about before, but I think you're more than able to handle that. So we'll start off with the first question. So if you can just tell a little bit about yourself, and then what are the barriers that we as community agencies, frontline workers, government, and so on, can't see that you experienced when you were finding your housing? So we'll just start with Pamela.
Oh,
or whoever.
Okay. I wrote down a few notes because I was like, I want to make sure that I get my points across. I think when I think of some of the obstacles that I faced when I was trying to fight through some of these things in the community, some of the obstacles that were happening for me was I was having mental health and addiction issues. So when that's happening, there was a lot of feelings that were happening for me. I had a lot of fear, mistrust, anxiety, abandonment issues, hopelessness. And for me, because I had all those things happening, I couldn't see a way out. I see no way out of how do I get out of this. And on top of that, my self-image and my self-esteem made it difficult for me to see that things could get better. So when you have all those things happening for you, it's very hard to see that things can get better. And so some of those barriers for me was the stigma, right? When you're facing that negative stigma in a community with multiple eyes on you, it makes it very difficult, right? And so when I went to ask for help, there was a lot of stigma in the community around, oh, she's just an addict. Oh, what do you mean you have depression? Get over it, right? You know, so there was all these things happening. Oh my God, she's an addict. She can't take care of her kids, right? So you have all that happening, and I'm already feeling bad enough about myself that it made it difficult for me to ask for help. And on top of that, I'm trying to navigate all the systems out there. And when I think about that, there's multiple care providers, and they were not communicating with one another. And imagine, I had all this trauma. I had all this past trauma from a child that had happened to me, and I had to retell my story over and over and over because nobody was communicating. everybody was separate. Nobody, there were so many different silos, and all these agencies weren't talking to one another. So every time there was another form to fill out, there was another person to talk about, and everybody wanted to hear my story. So I had to relive my trauma over and over. So I felt like I was being re-traumatized, and it was very difficult. And when I had to do this, I was doing it unwell. So I just felt like I was getting sicker. I wasn't getting better. It made it hard to access services at time, hard to access the services at time. There was time limits on things. You know, you've only got so much time. You got 10 sessions, or you only got this many sessions, and you have to have this done by this time. You know, transportation, childcare, trying to get childcare, all these things in place while I had to get to all this different programming. It was so difficult. I had child welfare involvement. I was trying to get my kids back. Child welfare wanted me to, I had to have a stable home before my kids could come home. Okay, I'll go try to get a stable home on $725 a month as a single person. And they wanted me to have a home. And it was one of the most difficult things to do, right? And so those were a lot of different barriers that I had to face, and it just made it very difficult. And on top of that, there was a lot of cultural insensitivity that was happening, and that made it very difficult for me. I think most of my questions are going to go into where I think change needs to happen, and I think I'll try to bring that into the next questions, because I know from now being a person that has accessed those services and actually found the ones that worked for me, I was able to get better and get the help that I needed. When I did finally find the ones that worked, watch me fly. Is that what I could say, right? I was able to get clean and sober. I've been clean and sober for 9 years. And I now have all my children back. You know, all my kids have graduated high school, you know, and they have all those things because I was able to access affordable housing eventually. When I got through the waiting lists, and I got through the barriers, and I got through everything I had to get through, my kids were able to get the things that they needed, and I was able to access the services that I needed, like hot lunch programs and coats for kids, and you know, I accessed all those services. And I think somebody made a good point about that today when you talk about your data. I may not need all those services today, but I sure did at one time. But because of affordable housing, I was able to not need them anymore. I was able to feel safe. I was able to feel I can breathe. You know, the anxiety went away. My kids felt safe. They had bedrooms, you know, I could afford the rent. I didn't have to worry about, okay, power might be off this month because I have to pay food, you know, because I couldn't afford market rate housing, you know. So, you know, I'm finally off assistance after 20 years. And I mean, I was scared to get off assistance. I depended on that for a long time. I've gone from low income to working poor. I work 4 jobs, but I pay taxes, and a lot of them. But, you know, that's the change that starts to happen when I was given the supports that I needed, right? Is I was able to let go of those services and learn how to survive and trust in myself, and the pride started to come back, and I started to feel like, hey, I can do this. And so I wanted to become a voice, and I wanted to become a voice for others and say, hey, just if you will give me that chance, watch what can happen for these people. And that's what started to happen. And it doesn't just affect me, it affects your children. Like, my children were able to get an education. Like all my kids are in school, you know, like I got a daughter going in to be a social worker. I got another daughter going in to be a probation officer, and another daughter who's working her butt off to go in to be a nurse right now, you know. So it's like, wow, you know, and and that's because, you know, I was able to get those supports, you know, get the help that I needed within the community, that helped me to get back to work and take financial literacy, and the housing support workers that were in place. So it's not all bad, you know, there is some good, but it took a while to get to the good, because I had a lot of barriers that I had to get through, and we shouldn't have to face that many barriers to get where I got. It should have been a little smoother. It would have been not so difficult. So I guess that's a few of the things that I'll share for now, and I'll let somebody else share.
Great. Thank you. Nikki?
Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of barriers, especially with Alberta Works. Like, just asking for help there is absolutely dehumanizing. Like, I've been brought to tears by workers there more times than I can fucking count. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, having to repeatedly tell my story of, like she said, like having gang re-traumatized because no one's communicating at all, and just like not empathetic at all to like my situation whatsoever. And it's really, really hard. Like, just the stigma of mental health and addictions, like that really, really needs to change. And I feel like people in those industries should like be more empathetic to these people's situations, not like, it feels like they're on a pedestal and they're just like, you're down here, and they treat you that way. It's absolutely like dehumanizing and really, really hard, and just re-traumatizes you. There's been tons of times where like I've been even just looking for places, and I'll like mention I'm on AISH, and the landlord will be like, oh, we've had problems with your type of people before, like, which is absolutely like the worst. And then just not being able to get into a place because I'm on AISH, because I have horrible credit, no co-signer. Like, I end up with a slumlord who will like charge me like extra rent just on a whim because he feels like it, and won't fix anything. And I'm constantly like, feel like I'm just walking on eggshells. Like, it's absolutely like horrible. Yeah. Yeah, there definitely needs to be a change in the way that workers are treating people. It's not okay at all.
Thank you. Kyle?
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for joining us.
He's not watching your bag, man.
All right. Hello, I'm Kyle. For those of you who have parents or even kids, can you imagine in your mind where you think they are right now? You probably have a good idea what they're doing. You can probably text them, and that's normal. That's not the reality for like a lot of the homeless youth who they don't know where their parents are. The parents don't know where they are. And that's kind of where you need to plunge into when figuring out what these barriers are, because it all goes back to neglect and lack of self-love that was taught by us and taught to us. And for myself, a bit of codependence too, inability to stand on your own 2 feet, which is not to demonize the parents we have. I like to believe that we all love the best way we know how, and that's true. It's true. But that's what we're coming from, and I feel like people say that it's a bad thing to be operating on like an upside down pyramid in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But for a lot of people, that's how we operate. That's how we need to be addressed, because for a lot of us, we need love and comfort and confidence in ourselves way before we would need a bank account. It's just how it is. And to flip the pyramid and try and make someone, it's like fitting a square peg into a triangle. And I don't think it's working for everyone that needs it. There's also a culture of homelessness when you get onto the streets that I don't think a lot of people will be aware of. And that's just how it is, because when youth talk to you, they put on a face. It's like, I'm the man of 1,000 faces because of where I came from and who I am. And you put on a face for whatever staff you talk to, and it changes every day to each staff. And if you want to know where the actual opinions are, the politics take place in the smoke pit. That's where we talk about things openly and honestly about, and that's where I learned a lot of these realities too. And there's a culture of homelessness that you get caught into during the first 2 weeks because we leave home or get kicked out, or for whatever reason. The reasons don't matter. I was homeless for 3 years, now I'm not. That's all you really need to know, because that's really just the reality of it. Everyone's story is different, but it's all the same. You get thrown into a culture of homelessness where you're accepted, all your failures are everybody else's failures, and you're cool if you do what's cool, and that's drugs and crime and all this stuff. You get caught up really quick because you leave a place where you don't feel welcome, you don't feel safe, and you go to a place where people say they got your back till the end, or when it's a culture that needs to be broken. And once you're ingrained in there, it's really hard to get out of. And there's this track and circuit that exists among the agencies that I would be interested to map out, like the actual tracks. There's pathways that the homeless youth go to, like, okay, during the day that place, during night this place, smoke at that place. It's like a work schedule, but it's like homelessness. It's kind of funny. And breaking that culture is so important because the older predatory type people who've been in it longer, they target the young people who come in. And that happens really, really, really fast. Especially the girls, you'd be surprised. They last like 3 months in like the harder core drop-in centers, and then they're gone, and we don't see them for a while, or they'll come back, and then they become the predators, and they actually ensnare other girls to go down the same path. And that's just the same freaking cycle. It's like sheep to a wolf's den. Like the sheep come in, and then it's just, you got to break that. And so, I'm gonna fly through this a little bit here. You got like 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so. I find like kids came in there and you see them coming off the streets. They don't look very comfortable to be on the streets, and they're all talking about, I'm gonna get a job, I'm gonna get off, or like I have a plan. But after 2 weeks, something happens, and I think it's like, I imagine it like a cell phone battery. When you leave home, it starts out fairly charged, but after those 2 weeks, you get to 11% and then 5%, and the shelters and the day drop-in places, you're not allowed to sleep. And I like to sleep because I feel rested. But you're not. So you can only really charge up to 15%, it feels like, every day. And that's not enough to move forward, I think. So that's a big barrier too. And I don't know where that thinking comes from, and I know I'm not ignorant to the fact that, if we just have people sleeping all day, that also has problems too, but let's figure something out, And so that's something you get caught into, this like what have you. And then after 2 weeks, you're ingrained in the culture. When you're homeless and doing drugs, your world gets very, very small, very small. And you forget what it's like to live another way. I imagine it like as digging a ditch into the ground, right? And then at a certain point, you don't notice it because you're just so focused on digging, the like horizon and around you, the world just kind of disappears. And then you're like, oh, this must be the world now. And you keep digging and digging and digging because you're only focused on the drugs and the use, and then you just start accepting this ditch as your only world. And it gets to a point where you look up and you're like, oh, see that bright little dot up there? They see that's the surface. I don't know though. And it's a tough climb, and it takes belief and faith to get there because it's no longer reality. You don't see it. You don't see it. I can't stress that enough. Your world gets very small. All you see is the people you see every day. Again, the culture of homelessness. You can break out of it. And but what it took for me was still a very good friend of mine, Jacob Boss, who I met in one of the drop-in centers. And he's a photographer, and we started a not-for-profit called Kids for Cameras. And I've never run a nonprofit, but I think we're doing pretty well. We give kids cameras at the co-op and basically say, take pictures of what you want to express. We just give them cameras and say, just take pictures to express themselves in appropriate ways. And every kid will see a big shiny camera, they'll like it, they're into it. We have kids constantly in the program coming in, taking pictures, getting them edited, and they like it. They like being given something expensive and being trusted to return it back. And for the most part, they return it back, which is really cool. It's that street thing. That was the first things I learned. If someone tougher than you takes something from you, you're not supposed to flip out, because that's what they're doing. They're trying to, if I take this and you're like, hey, give me my water bottle back, I'm gonna keep your water bottle. But if you're cool about it, I'll take it back, and I learn that's kind of like how we operate. It's that level of respect, I guess. And the idea is that the pictures is self-expression, self-reflection through self-expression. I had a video camera when I was homeless, and I realized that I was just telling the same story over and over again. I'm trying to get off the streets, I don't get off the streets, and I just played the videos over and over. And the idea is that at a certain point you learn that you're the one writing the pen if you journal long enough. You're the one writing the pen, that's the idea. But also we get IDs for kids every week. That's part of like the second part, fast track out. But anyways, Jacob believed in me. He believed in me and he showed me like a future out of it. Something I could care about more than the drugs, and that was photography. And it took someone to believe in me when I couldn't do it to ignite that flame, but not forever. I had to see something. I had to see the surface before I could make the climb, I guess. It's weird. Yeah.
Good. Cool.
Yeah, well,
Thanks, Kyle. Don. What would you like to share with us?
hi, I'm Don, and I got homeless because I got addicted to drugs, right? There's a saying that goes on there, right? What do you call a single construction worker? Homeless, right? And, you know, like, I got onto the drugs, and like Nikki was saying, and I tried to get help. Right? You know, go into social assistance, right? Right away, you're on drugs, beat it, right? You go to a program, and they say, okay, well, we'll put you in here for a week, you're here for a month, beat it, right? And it doesn't work like that. I found a place that did help me. It was the Hope Mission, and stay as long as you want, as long as you want to stay clean. Thanks to them, I just celebrated 7 years, clean and sober. You know, I never thought, you know, I could be up there sitting there throwing a big book at people, getting them started, you know, and I'm going right on, you know, it's helping. But I find, like even my place I'm living, I've been living 5 years, right? And I got a manager there, right? Like he's total anal retentive, right? You know, he because of my hair and that, right? And that, you know, he going, oh my God, because I get subsidy, and he goes, well, you must have been on drugs all your life, right? And I'm going, buddy, you know, what I made when I was working in construction, I paid in taxes, right? You didn't make it a month, right? But, you know, this is one of the barriers we got. We got barriers with social assistance, trying to get help, right? If you want to help, right? I was like, I know people that were sick, legitimately sick. I went in and said, here, I need a doctor's help with a doctor. They went, no, you don't qualify. But if you were on heroin, we put you on the methadone program and you got full medical. Now, something's wrong with that, you know, thing there, you know? It's a wrong thing. And bylaw enforcement and that, right? Like, they move you along quickly, right? You know, just because they got a problem with us burning their fences to keep warm, I don't get it, right? You know, it was unreal. But they would not put you anywhere to keep warm, you know? After 12 o'clock, you can't get anywhere in there, right? So I got into this fear thing. Everybody has a different definition of fear. Mine was fuck everything and run. So that was it, eh? And I just finally, I gave up. But then I went really overboard with the drugs. I had 2 heart attacks in a row. And I kicked myself in the ass, and I got into the program, and they helped me out. And, you know, starting with the medical, you know, getting your ID back. There's a hard thing. Like I'm telling you, man, if some people down on the streets, right, you got to watch everything. So some people down there will steal sugar out of your coffee if they can figure it out, you know? Yeah, it's unreal. And you go into the hospital. I went and saw a specialist one time, and he looked at me and he goes, well, you know, we have to take one of you charity cases, right? It's a good thing the other doctor joked me because he would have been a case. You know, like it's just the way people look at you and you know, stereotype you. And it gets right on your nerves after a while. That's got to change, right? You know? But, you know, with the Homeward Trust and that, I found they do have a little bit of faith. This program should keep going. It works well. People that want to use it, I'd say, you know, it's working really well. When I first started speaking, like for the Homeward Connect there, right? It was this many people. Now there are, what, 5,000 houses now?
Oh, for Housing First? Yeah, we've housed 5,000 people.
Yeah, so it's all going up, right? You know, and more and more people are asking, and you see less violence on the street. Right? Well, I don't see it in my home anymore. It's perfect. You know? But, you know, that's what I want to see. And, you know, it's working and the incomes, you know, like I found like trying to get into this program was if you did not have a guaranteed income, it was, you weren't getting in. You had to have medical welfare and shit like that, right? So what actually happened, I got my foot crushed on a garbage truck, right? And I got medical, or else I wouldn't have got this, right? So maybe that's something that, you know, guys could look at, you know, for, like, there is a lot of single men out there that are working temp that cannot, you know, you can't save money. You're spinning your wheels, right? And they are good people and they want to get ahead, but to stay in a shelter and to raise $2,000 just to get into a place is not feasible. Because you got $2,000, you're getting knocked out. That's all there is to it, right? Well, that's all I got to say, and thank you very much, man.
Thanks, Don. Danielle,
Oh my God, it's my turn?
it is your turn.
Already? Man, I was trying to hide. Okay, for me, the barriers that a little bit about me was I wasn't homeless for that long. I found a place at the YMCA, hostel, whatever it's called. I was staying there with my 1-year-old. One of the workers actually came up to me and said that we're starting this new program for Housing First. Would you like to be on the list? You'll be the first one on our list. I said, sure, but I was really hesitant. I was scared. I didn't know what the program was about, this and that. The workers were still unsure about how the program's working, what they do, and all that stuff. And I actually waited until one of the other ladies, sweetheart she is, like sweetheart. She actually almost gave birth in the TV room when she was staying there. But she after she gave birth to her son, 2 days later, she was housed, and she came back to me, and she goes, do it. It's the best thing you can do. So I did, and I got housed at this one house, or one apartment, I should say, and I thought it was nice. It was my very first place with my daughter, and you know, the landlord's really nice to the workers, this and that, but was really judgmental about me. I remember putting my daughter for a nap and going to have a shower to get ready for the day, and I come out to my landlord snooping around my house. So I called my worker from the YMCA and I told her what was going on. She said she would call him and call me back. So she calls and she said that he sent you a notice saying that, but I never did get a notice saying that he was coming into my apartment. I actually caught him snooping in my bedroom. So I asked if I could get rehoused. If they never did rehouse me to my second place, I think I would be back on the streets because I'd be too scared, unsafe in this apartment. So they rehoused me into this one place, and then same thing. So I think I moved 7 times before I actually felt safe where I am now. And where I am now is, I love it. The landlords are awesome, but the barriers that I found trying to get where I am was with placing people in these rentals and all this stuff. Some places they look at you and be like, oh yeah, okay, you'll be approved for this, you'll be ready for the first. But as soon as you say, well, I'm with Alberta Works and I'm getting subsidized with Housing First, would you accept that? They're like, oh no, and back off. It took me almost 5 years to find an actual place that accepted me and all this stuff. And if the workers that I worked with weren't there, I'd probably be back on the streets with my child. And, you know, I am so grateful for what they did to me, the way they supported me. When I needed them, they were always there. They're still here for me. Like, I call my worker up and I say, you know, I really need help with this, this, and this. And she's right on it. She does everything that I need help with. Like, she helps me do the research on what I need. She helps me do Like if I need help with my daughter for schooling and all that stuff, she helps me find places that I can go to get the resources I need. But with that said, the rent is really high. Like I can't afford rent on my own. I pay $1,900 for a 3-bedroom apartment that includes water, power, and heat. I only get, after I get my rent paid from subsidy and from Alberta Works, I only end up getting $400 for the rest of the month to survive on. Like, it is so hard. And as a single mother, I can honestly say, you know, this program for Housing First, Homeward Trust, anything, is the best thing that's ever happened in my life. If it wasn't for that, I'd be on the streets, I would have lost my children, I'd probably be dead because of the fact that I'd probably turn to drugs, start drinking all over again. And because of them, I'm sober. I've been sober for 8 years, almost 9 years now. And the point of the story is it's very hard for young women that are single parents, even couples, even teenagers. It's hard for them to stand up for themselves and say, I need help. And I want to be here and be like, you know, for some of those people, take the help. They will help you. They'll get you back your life, what you need, because that's what they did for me. Thank you.
Yeah. You can do it. Hold on, good.
So, I know the second question was about, you know, how should research engage people lived experience? I think it's evident just from what you've said and also what people have said earlier that it's integral. But actually, what I want to do is just shift a little bit and ask you, you know, from your perspectives.
I like blue.
Blue? Okay. So I was going to ask, what are the two, if you could pick two things that you would change right now in terms of the systems, in terms of the services and all that, what would those two things be?
2?
3? I'll go as far as 3, and then I want to have lots of time for
Okay,
questions.
I'll be really quick because I wrote them down.
Sure,
so
okay,
I'll be
great.
quick. Okay. So I wrote them down in point form. I tried to. I said, I think providers need to understand and really understand is that I'm going to use this in I statement, but I may have chosen drugs and alcohol, but I never chose my addiction and my mental health. And you need to understand that. I think that's a big part for a lot of people, is that you need to look past that, right? I never chose. And have empathy and understanding and walk beside me, not in front of me, right? Walk beside me and understand my journey, right? And I think that's a really important part. And I'm just like you. I'm a grandmother. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I want what you want. I want security. I want a job. I want a home, and I want to feel safe. I'm no different than you. You've heard our stories over and over and over. You have the data. Let's make the change, right? How much more data do we need? I heard a woman up here this morning say she's been working for this company from what I think she said, what was it, 2009 to 2016, 7 years of data? How much more data do we need? Let's make the change for our people and let's move forward. Let's just do something. If it doesn't work, we'll try again. But we need to start making the changes. And you know, there's working poor, there's a huge gap in market housing. I would love to move out of low-income housing. I can't. I can't afford market rate housing. I can't. So I've been in low-income housing for 7 years. I can't get out. I want to. I can't afford to. And rebuilding the relationships that have been broken down between government and nonprofit sectors. We need to work together. We need to collaborate together. That's such an important piece. We're all trying to do the same thing. I think we all, from what I've seen from the different areas I work in public, nonprofit, and government sectors, we're all fighting for the same dollar. We all want the same thing. And I think sometimes that we forget the big picture. We forget who we're doing it for. lived experience, you want to know who needs to be at the table? They're sitting right in front of you. That's who needs to be at the table. Not people with suits, not those ones, right? These people who've lived it. Sorry, no offense, guys. You need to be there too, you bring the money. But I really, like you said, you need the voices, right? You know, I really think the voices are the change. Sorry.
That was going to be my question. Yeah, you bring at least the money.
You can pick that. And I think, you know, the guy that came for our mayor today, he, you know, what the mayor is doing is incredible. Don Iveson blows my mind. He's an incredible man, and he sees the needs in our city. Truth and reconciliation is so huge. And racism, right? We live with that. We've seen it all the time. It was such a big part of our barriers. And early childhood development and childcare needs. I mean, I can't even get childcare because they say I make too much money. I'm like, excuse me? So, you know, so
That's okay. I can't even get childcare because of the fact that I'm not working.
Yeah. And
So,
I mean, so there's some barriers there, right? So I'm working, you know, 4 jobs and I don't see my son, right? So, but I'm not on assistance, right?
Yeah.
So, but I miss being a mother, right? I miss raising my son. And school programs, right? And food security, you know? Food security is so important, right? So there's lots of, those are my 4. They're a little over. Sorry. But those are some of the things. I mean, I heard some really good things today in some of the stuff that you guys were talking about today. I think there's some really good things happening out there. But yeah, those are just some of the things that we need to think about. The level of income that is happening doesn't match. It's not relative to the cost of living, right? So we need to remember that. You got to match those two. If you want people out of poverty, you have to match, and you got to give people incentives to want to get out of poverty, right? The more I make, the more you take. Well, what the heck do you think I want to do? I want to quit working, right? But you know, I feel good, right? I get up every day, I go to work, and I taught my kids new values, right? My kids all want to make change in their lives, and they're doing that because I made change, right? So that's my stuff.
Thank you. Nikki, your 2 things. How naive of me to say 2, right? As if it was only 2 things that need to change.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I like being treated like a human, not less than human. So I definitely want to see more empathy and support.
Right on, yeah.
I'm with you, Nikki.
And like, when someone's like on AISH or income support, like, they need more money. Like, you can't afford rent and food and like all the things to live like a normal human being with the money that's supplied. Like, you just can't. And rent is really expensive here. Like, it's really hard to like find a place where you can like afford rent, bills, like all those things, and just live and be able to like eat food. Like, the amount of times where I've had to pay bills instead of eat food is just ridiculous. And then go to the food bank, and then I end up getting food poisoning. That's happened a few times, and that's not okay.
Well, cat food it.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, and just more empathy. Like, people who come from privilege, there's like just that huge like blockage there. Like, they don't get it, and like it costs $0 to be a decent human being to someone. Like, you don't need to act like you're better than someone else and treat someone like.
Hello.
Hello.
I quickly really agree with what Nikki said. I always thought, in terms of like firefighters, if you're in a burning building, what firefighter do you want to see like come through the door to save you? Like the one who's like wanted to do this their whole life and is super stoked to like get up in the morning, or like the one who's like saving, like who's just not, you know.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. You again?
And I was supposed to like rally that point at the end and sort of like say, yeah. So I don't know, if you're in the position to promote and you see firefighters in your department, promote them or do something. You know, they want to save lives and stuff. I don't know. I'm so apathetic about that. Like, yeah, just promote the people who can do the stuff that needs to be done. Okay, things I want to change. Can you just share your data, please? It seems to be like what
Okay.
everyone like wants to do, so we can like operate transparently, so we can figure out how to save people. I'm coming in blind on this, but this seems like it's what, I don't know. Anyhow, I'll get back to the sentimental stuff. Okay, fast track out. When you are on the streets, housing to me wasn't like a reality until like a year and a half, 2 years. Like it wasn't just there. It was, I'm on the streets, so I guess this is my life. I feel like there needs to be like a fast track out program where anyone who can come in the streets, everything's like lined up for them. It has to have like a fancy name, not fast track out, because that's actually a jail term.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Federal time, yep.
when I was trying to do the non-profit thing, I was just throwing it out there, like, we'll fast track you out of here. I'm like, oh, no, it's not. It's not a good thing. A better name. But the idea is that if you're ready to get off the streets during those 2 weeks where it seems like the lights come on every once in a while for youth, where there's like this period, 2 weeks a week, where they kind of like you see them sitting at the table during breakfast. And it's like, what's up, buddy? It's like, well, I just think I should stop doing drugs. And they're like, well, yeah. And they're in that space where they're ready to kind of move forward. There's got to be a program there that doesn't take like a month to get in or to, because you're operating on 11% too. And then there's this also mentality where it's like, oh, well, they need to do it themselves to learn strength. And I'm like, oh, well, he's having trouble with the stretches. Maybe you should just get him or her like moving. Like you don't learn to swim when you're already drowning, that type of mentality and ideal. I got into housing because the people at the co-op just signed me up. And then one day they're like, oh, hey, you have housing on the 14th. Yeah, I'm like, oh, that's good. And like, I didn't realize what it meant until I was like off the streets. I'm like, well, this is like a completely different reality. It's got to be up at the front, the housing first and quick too. Hey, can we have the group homes in Terwilliger? No, hold on, let me explain. Now I know what you're thinking. I've seen so many friends who get moved into housing like on 118th or like into bad areas. And the trouble is when you get them to a point where they're seemingly able to get to a place where they can live on their own, and you throw them into, do what?
Reading the lines down, right?
Yeah. Well, I use the dirty fish kind of metaphor. Like if you're trying to get like a fish healthy and clean, you can't do it in like a filthy swamp or pond or whatever. And you got to throw them in like a clear, bright, awesome lake to get clean and stuff. And I know that's not how like nature works, like swamp and lake people, but that's just how I think about it. Last thing, Ace checks, Mardi Gras. Okay, do you know what Mardi Gras is?
Yeah, Don raised it earlier, but you can explain.
Do you want to explain?
Well, you go ahead, brother.
Okay.
You know what it is.
Mardi Gras is this strange phenomenon that we have. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but like everyone talks about this in the smoking pit. It's common knowledge, so maybe you guys should know too. Mardi Gras is check day. What happens on the 25th when everyone's paid, and that's when the streets go wild, and that's when I believe there's that dip in the homeless shelters. Yeah. And I remember when I was younger, I saw that happen. I'm like, oh, everyone got cured. Like everyone gets better.
They were sick 3 days later.
Yeah. Actually, that might be when the crime actually is the worst, like the coming down week.
Yeah.
Just because everyone like has debts and stuff. But that's basically what it is. And so the people who are housed get paid, and then it trickles down into the streets always, and then you take out loans, and then we get into that weird gray area of like what to do, what not to do. Like, oh, are we going to be communists and stuff? Like, you don't want to like enforce weird rules and stuff. But I don't know, maybe you could like break it up into chunks. But then again, that's kind of like taking away like rights and stuff. I don't know. Can you guys like figure it out or something? But $1,000 or more is a lot to give to people. Especially, I'm seeing now a lot of my former friends. They get hounded and mooched on by people who aren't doing so well, and it disappears so fast. And then they struggle for like 20 days, like, oh, I have no food, that's normal. Ha, 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 ha. It's just like, no, you don't get it. That's all I want to say.
Great. Thank you. Don.
Myself personally, I'd like to see the provincial government have a look at what they're giving, right, for people living on welfare net. $323 a month for rent, right? I'd like to see them go out and try and rent a storage unit for that. Okay? You know, like, it is not feasible, man. You know, like, it's unreal. If I had to do that, I'd be back on the street or in prison. Prison's cheaper, I don't have to pay rent. Right? You know, Homeward Trust has helped me out. But that 323 has been stagnant for so long, right? It has not moved. But the bus fare went up here in February, right? Well, okay, well, the tickets didn't go up, but the bus passes went up to $91.50. You look at your check, you only get $89. That means that's got to come out of your bills, right? Yeah. Oh, well, we'll catch up to you next time. Yeah, I'm sure you. What's the saying? I'm from the government. I'm here to help, right? But, you know, this should be looked at, you know, like, because, like, Gary knows, and like, when we're working, right, we're allowed a cap of $1,000 for, you know, like, we put in the 323, and they put it in, and they're capped off at 1,000, right? With the rents going up and that, right, you're in a shithole, you're staying in the shithole. Right? And if that shithole goes up to 1,050, that 50's coming out of your pocket. You know, it's just, you know, that's something they should have to look at for people, you know, to give to that, right? Or else it'll come out of the food money, you know, or bill money, right? You know?
That's where I am
back to
right
the,
now.
Back to the dark ages with candles, right? It's romantic, but what the hell? Right? That's all I got. Thank you very much, Hugo.
Danielle?
Like Don said, rent comes out of food money, this and that. It's hard, especially as a single mom. But 2 reasons. Can you repeat the question again so I can refresh?
Two things that need to get changed.
Oh, 2 things that need to be changed is, you know, housing. It needs to change. It needs to the rent needs to either get lower or somebody has to accommodate how the rent's getting higher.
Capped.
Or capped. Whatever. I'm tired. Sorry. But you know what I mean? Like, me, I stress, I am a single mom of 2. I am. And it's so hard for me. I am so lucky that my rent includes my power, water, heat. Because if my rent didn't, I don't think I could afford anything. I'd be living like the Stone Age. I'd have my house, but no water, no power, no heat. I'd have to find some other way so that I can survive and have my children survive to have food on the table. Like, it's just so hard lately. And I still struggle with food and, you know, my daughter's school, it's like school for kids, it's not cheap. I have to fork out $60 almost every month for her to be at school. And that is cheaper than doing homeschooling. Like, I've looked at options to help me save money so that I can provide for my family. Like, it's just so hard, and I cannot stress how hard it is. And I am so grateful for Homeward Trust and all the workers that's got me to where I am today, because I wouldn't be here. But the one thing is the 2 reasons things should change is either the rent has to come down, or we have to get more money somehow so that we can survive. Because I'm scraping pennies. Well, there's no pennies anymore, so dimes and nickels just to survive and have food for my children. Thank you.
Thanks.
So,
So,
you did good. You really good.
what's the time? I think we have time for like maybe a. We have time for about a question or 2. I just want to clarify, when we talk about the Housing First program, Robbie, where are you? There are how many agencies? 12? agencies? 13 agencies that deliver it. I would rattle them off, but basically name an inner city serving agency, and they either provide an intensive case management team, a rapid rehousing team, and a assertive community treatment team, or permanent supportive housing. You know, I just want to acknowledge that the workers are all, you know, in the agencies, these agencies have done incredible work over the last 6, 7 years. So anyways, thank you all. Questions? There.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment. Like I said, like I introduced myself earlier. I manage a low-income affordable housing program for Aboriginal Albertans. And this company is 100% owned and operated by Ochis First Nation. So we don't get any subsidized monies from any like government. Our company, the Ochis First Nation Business and Investment Center, actually subsidizes the rents. So what I'm trying to tell you is, like, we're a small company. We have 43 units, both in Red Deer and Edmonton, and because we're like so small, we don't have a lot of resources available in order to really, I guess, address highly barriered, in some circumstances, applicants who would otherwise be homeless, right? So one of the eligibility criteria is part of our housing program is our applicants must understand that their household must achieve personal stability in their lives, right? And with that being said, it's almost like, coming from the perspective of a landlord, it's almost as if there needs to be a middle program there, where I could actually, instead of being barriered and shutting the door to some applicants, it's almost as if I have to refer them, you know what I mean? Like, to deal with their addictions. If they come to us for housing, because we're a small program and we lack the resources and the funding available to like address some of these high social issues, it's almost as if like us as an organization has to direct them to somebody else to help deal with their addictions, and then they can come back to us, you know what I mean? So I think that's a gap in the affordable housing in Edmonton, and as well as in the mainstream rental market, right? I don't want to turn people away, but sometimes I have to, right? Because there's just like 3 of us, right? There's a housing application clerk, me as the property manager, and we just introduced a tenant relations worker within our program, right? I don't want to discriminate against people and close the door on like homelessness, but you know what? Quite frequently I have to, you know, because sometimes I can't deal with the personal challenges some of our applicants face, right? Like, for instance, like one of our properties, we just recently had like gang member affiliation in a drive-by shooting. You know, I have a responsibility as a landlord to protect the community as well. And when there's no resources and funding for me to refer that person to, or you know what I mean? Like, it almost feels like it's a vicious cycle. So that's why I'm here, right? To finally network and reach out, because I feel like for me, I worked front line for this company since 2007, and I feel like I'm burning myself out, you know, dealing with the psychology of like highly social barriered people. And you know, I don't want to be labeled racist of my own people, or racist of, you know what I mean? Or be labeled that I'm practicing discrimination or whatever. But you know what? Sometimes I can't deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So it would be great if I would know, like if I could refer a lot of my applicants to a third party, in order for them to help me, you know, to help this company.
And I think that, I mean, that's a general issue with any kind of affordable housing. I mean, if we can support landlords or providers of affordable housing and in connecting tenants to supports, I think we could actually sustain tenancies much better. So thank you for that comment.
Hi. I know that two of you are moms, and but other people can comment on this as well. And we talk a lot about how expensive homelessness is, or how expensive it would be to, you know, raise people's income supports a little bit. But two things that are impacted when parents are homeless or are struggling to even have food or heat or water is the threat of having your children apprehended for neglect or for not being able to provide those essentials. So do any of you want to comment on either things that you've seen, people you know, or just how essential it is to house families and moms and dads rather than put them in the situation where the government might see them as being neglectful and not able to provide for their own children, and which I see as far more expensive?
Danielle or Pamela?
Oh, I'm glad you're not pregnant. I just wanted to say I can talk from the experience of when I got my kids back, right? Like when I was trying to get my kids back and I got into sobriety, I was in a sober house. And when I was in that sober house, I couldn't even have visits in that sober house with my children. And so I had to find places in the community to go and visit with my children. And when I was trying to do that, I had no money. So I couldn't feed them, right? When I would try to go have visits with them. And I would have to visit with them in a mall or, you know, in a park or wherever. And they were supervised, right? And then the child welfare was telling me, in order to get your kids back, you have to have housing. And so I was in, you know, sober housing, trying to find a place with $323 is what I was allowed for rent. And so I had to try to find housing, and I was panicking and scared all the time that they were going to keep my kids. They said, you have 3 more months till they're PGO. And so I had that threat over my head all the time, but I couldn't find housing because I couldn't afford to find housing. But they wanted me to find a home. Thankfully, I mean, there was a home there, but it doesn't even exist anymore. That was for families getting their kids back. And I got into that home. I lived in a 2-bedroom with 4 kids for a year. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know what would have happened, right? But that threat was there. Like when you have that threat all the time, it's a scary threat, you know. And when you've had your kids taken away, and then when I got into low-income housing and I moved, that threat and that anxiety doesn't go away easy, right? Especially when you're still, even though I got into low-income housing, I still had a very low budget. And you have to remember, I was in addiction for 25 years, right? And very bad addiction, right? So when my kids came home, you know, I couldn't go to work right away. I didn't choose to want to sit on welfare. You know, I didn't choose to want to, you know, and people seeing it, oh, she's just a welfare mom. That's not what I wanted. I just wasn't capable of working yet because I had to get better. You know, I had to have my mental stability come back. I wasn't a mom for a long time, so I had to learn how to be a real parent, right? Like, I didn't know how to be a parent because I wasn't taught how to be a parent. So I was taking parenting skill, they had parenting programs, I had random urine tests, I had like all this stuff happening. They wanted me, you know, to go to counseling, and there was all this stuff happening, you know, while I'm still trying to survive and feed my children and worry about my kids being taken away. So yes, we need to change those laws for kids, you know, for people having their kids come home. I really believe if I had enough money, I would open a home where we had a hub in the basement and had low income upstairs, and we had a place for children trying to, you know, for parents trying to get their children home, because it is it's the biggest stressor for them when they're trying to get their children home and they can't, you know, because they can't afford to.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a study looking at the costs associated with apprehension and you know, care of children while women are, well, parents, I guess, are homeless, but that would certainly be a important cost to include.
I'm with Pamela.
Do you want something?
No, I agree with Pamela. If I could afford it, I would have single parents come live with me, and I would help them get their children back, do everything in my power to get them back on track of their own lives with their children. Like, as a parent, it's the hardest thing. I struggle every day hoping that, you know, my children are going to stay with me, because the fear of them leaving, like, they're the reason why I work so hard to be where I am. Like, I would not give them up for anything. I'm crying.
I just wanted to say that, Danielle, you said something that really hit home to me, and you said that it took being rehoused 7 times
To feel safe.
to feel safe. And I've seen a lot of the clients that I work with where they need another opportunity, and sometimes even paying to have their locks changed, or a new rehousing is what they need, and it's that step that moves them forward and leads them to such amazing things that I can't do. How
Yeah.
do you feel about the fact that Homeward Trust is coming towards the end of our 10-year plan?
I'm really grateful for what they've done for me. I cannot be any more grateful. I love them. I love everybody that works for them. They've just done so much for me, and, you know, I cannot stress enough on how much they've helped me get to where I am, and to help me feel safe about where I live. And I feel safe enough to actually let my children outside to play, like, and they've done that for me. And yeah, I don't know if that's your question, but that's my answer.
I think it kind of was. Sometimes it's hard as a worker when you're trying to advocate for your clients, and there's not enough money in the budget to be able to move them forward or to help out in the ways that they can. So I'm hopeful that this will lead to a lot more collaboration and
Yeah.
change in our systems.
Yeah, I hope the very best for your clients and everything, that, you know, they do end up feeling safe at one point, like I do.
I just have a comment associated with the cost of separating parents and children, and the fear and the anxiety. And, you know, we can cost that out, and we've talked a lot about money and what things cost and how we can save money. But I think there also is that emotional and social cost of doing that lasts generations and generations, and I think impacts things down the road by, you know, not considering, you know, sometimes the dollar isn't as important as the social and emotional part of the decision. Yes.
I think I think their system it's working. Like, you just take the kid away and you teach them how to live a different life, and then you return them. He said with heavy sarcasm. Self-awareness.
Great. Well, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone on our panel. And so I just want to also mention that actually all 5 people here are involved with Homeward Trust. As I mentioned, many of them we met through our lived experience engagement. Pamela's been on our community plan committee for several years now, a very important member of that. Both Nikki and Kyle are on our youth advisory group, which we've established as part of the launch of our youth strategy. And we are in the process of establishing a participant advisory council. And both Danielle and Dawn have been working with Naomi on setting that up, and Matt has been working on the youth advisory group. So anyways, you'll hear a lot more from them and from other people with lived experience, and I hope that it continues to enrich our approaches and what we do to serve, to end homelessness in Edmonton. So with that, want to pass on the mic, invite Elder Gilman to come up and give us a closing prayer. And you guys can get out of the hot seat if you want.
Right.
Or stay there, it's up to you. You guys did really well.
Nice and slim, Geary. Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you again. I wore my going home ribbon shirt. So I think you're pretty tired today and ready to head home. I wanted to give a round of applause for the 5 brave people that came here and talked. And one of them in particular really struck home to me. You know, you can gather stats, all kinds of fancy stats and numbers, but the most important stats are the 5 that are sitting here. And let's do something about their concerns. For 40 years, I don't want to get political here. I'm an elder, gotta remember that. But for 40 years, I worked for the provincial government. And one of the areas I worked in was careers, job corps. And often, more than not, an individual would come to us to come and work and try to change. And bang, we take the supports away from them. We got to quit doing that. We couldn't send people to treatment. They couldn't work and function reasonably. Standard way of life. I went ahead and, on my own, got into a lot of trouble and sent people to treatment because they couldn't work, they couldn't function. We need to keep those supports in place till the families, the people, individuals are ready. And then they can make informed choices. Too much of that happens all of a sudden. But I want to thank you all again for being here collectively together and looking at that whole area of homelessness. I raised a son. I raised 3 boys. And I lost a son in Vancouver. He lived a very risky life. That often strikes home when I hear people talking about all those different situations. We need to empower and support people like the 5 that spoke so well today. We need to make changes in government, in certain areas especially, to be more effective and get results. So our numbers will actually change, positive. But I want to thank the Creator for bringing all of you here today. Important missions for all of you to make life better for Albertans, especially in certain sectors of our population. And I'll ask the Creator to get you home safely tonight. Hi. Thank you very much for having me. Nasko Mondi Hi.